Truck driver helped woman with broken-down car without knowing she was a millionaire. Frank Miller never imagined that a simple stop on the highway would change his life forever. The 50-year-old man was going through one of the worst phases of his life, struggling to maintain his dignity as bills piled up on the kitchen table. That's when he spotted the imported car pulled over on the side of the road, connecting New York City to the countryside, its hood up, and a blonde woman in a dark blazer desperately trying to make a call. Frank glanced at the clock on his truck's dashboard and sighed heavily. He was late for a crucial delivery, and another delay would mean a cut in the payment he so desperately needed. But something in his conscience wouldn't let him just drive past. He pulled his truck onto the shoulder and stepped out, observing the woman, who appeared to be around 40. She looked up as she heard his footsteps approaching, and Frank noticed a mix of relief and wariness in her eyes. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Need some help?" Frank asked, removing his cap and running a hand through his graying hair. The woman hesitated for a moment, studying the man in his simple clothes and calloused hands. "My car just stopped working. I can't call anyone." "There's no signal here," she replied, showing him her phone. Frank walked over to the car and examined the engine. It was a model he wasn't entirely familiar with, but years on the road had taught him a lot about basic mechanics. "Mind if I take a look?" "Might be something simple," he offered. The woman nodded, still keeping some distance. Frank began inspecting the engine, his experienced hands checking cables and connections. As he worked, she watched those hands, marked by hard labor, and noticed a faded photo stuck to the truck's dashboard. "Is that your daughter?" she asked, pointing to the picture. Frank paused and looked in the direction she indicated. His expression softened, a mix of tenderness and worry crossing his face. "Yeah, my Emily. She's 15, he answered, before turning back to the engine. "She's very pretty. Must be in school right now, huh?" Frank hesitated longer this time, and the woman realized she'd touched on something delicate. "Actually, she's in the hospital. Has been for 4 months, he said, his voice growing quieter. "I'm so sorry. Is it serious?" "Heart problems. The doctors say she needs surgery, but the insurance won't cover it, and I—" Frank cut himself off, focusing again on the engine. "Sorry. Shouldn't be talking about this with you, ma'am." Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just starting. Now, back to the story. The woman felt something stir in her chest. There was something genuine about this man, an honesty she hadn't encountered in her world for a long time. "What's your name?" she asked. "Frank Miller, ma'am. And you?" Catherine Parker," she replied, deliberately leaving out the last name that would give her away immediately. Frank identified the problem. A loose hose had caused overheating. It was a simple fix, but he needed water to cool the radiator. "I've got water in the truck. Be right back," he said. As Frank walked away, Catherine studied the truck. It was old but well kept. She could tell this man took pride in his work, even amid hardship. When he returned with a jug of water, she watched him work with dedication, as if it were his own car. "All set, should work now," Frank said, closing the hood. Catherine turned the key, and the engine roared to life. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her wallet. "Nothing, ma'am. It was just a loose hose, a matter of minutes. But you lost time, and I can see you're in a hurry." "Some things are more important than money," replied Frank, wiping his hands on a rag. Catherine was surprised by his answer. In her world, everything had a price. Every favor expected something in return. "At least let me pay for the fuel you used stopping here," she insisted. "Really, there's no need. I'm happy to help." Frank started walking back to his truck, but Catherine called out to him. "Frank, about your daughter. Which hospital is she in?" He stopped and turned, a curious expression on his face. "Memorial Hospital, here in New York City." "Why?" "Just curious. I hope everything turns out well," she said, offering a sincere smile. Frank nodded in thanks and climbed into the truck. Catherine watched him drive away, feeling an inexplicable connection to this stranger. When the truck disappeared down the road, she discreetly noted the license plate number in her phone. During the drive to his destination, Frank couldn't stop thinking about the woman. There was something different about her, a sadness hidden behind her elegance. But soon his thoughts returned to reality. The delay would cost him dearly, literally. Catherine, meanwhile, drove in silence for the first time in years. No driver, no assistance, just her and her thoughts. The encounter with Frank had awakened something she thought she'd lost forever, faith in human kindness. When Frank arrived at the delivery site, his worst fears were confirmed. The manager was furious and imposed a hefty fine for the delay. It was money Frank couldn't afford to lose, especially now. "Miller, this can't happen again. Our clients demand punctuality," the manager said, handing him the receipt with the deduction. "I understand, sir. There was an unexpected issue on the road, but it won't happen again," Frank replied, pocketing the paper bitterly. At the hospital, Emily waited eagerly for her father's visit. She was a bright girl, with the same kind eyes as Frank, but her paleness betrayed months of hospitalization. "How was work today, Dad?" she asked when he arrived. "Same as usual, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Better. The nurse said I might be able to go home for a quick visit this weekend." Frank forced a smile. He knew Emily couldn't leave the hospital before the surgery, but he didn't want to burden her with medical details. "That would be great, wouldn't it? Do you miss home?" "I miss our kitchen, the couch, and I miss seeing you relaxed," Emily said, showing a maturity beyond her 15 years. Frank felt a tightness in his chest. His daughter had noticed his distress, even though he'd tried to hide it. "Dad, I know the surgery is expensive. I saw the papers when you thought I was sleeping." "Emily, you don't need to worry about that. But I do. You're working too hard, and I see how sad you get when you think I'm not looking." Frank held his daughter's hand, struggling to control his emotions. "We'll figure it out, sweetheart. We always have, haven't we?" "Always," Emily agreed, squeezing his hand. Meanwhile, Catherine arrived at her apartment in the most upscale part of New York City. It was a vast, luxurious place, but empty of warmth. She tossed her keys onto the marble table and poured herself a glass of wine, but couldn't bring herself to drink. The conversation with Frank lingered in her mind. It had been years since she'd met someone who acted without expecting anything in return. In her corporate world, every gesture had a hidden motive. Every kindness masked a strategy. Catherine picked up her phone and dialed her assistant. "Jennifer, I need you to do some discreet research for me. A truck driver named Frank Miller. He has a daughter at Memorial Hospital." "Any trouble, Miss Parker?" "No trouble. I just need some basic information. And Jennifer, keep this between us." "Of course, Miss Parker. I'll have the information for you first thing tomorrow." Catherine hung up and stared out the window of her apartment. Below, the city buzzed with life, but she felt utterly alone. The encounter with Frank had stirred memories she'd tried hard to bury. The next morning, Frank woke before his alarm. The bills on the kitchen table seemed to have multiplied overnight. Electricity, truck loan payments, Emily's medications that the insurance wouldn't cover. He grabbed a calculator and tried crunching the numbers again, but the result was always the same. It didn't add up. The phone rang just as he was leaving for work. "Mr. Frank Miller?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Memorial Hospital. I have an update about your daughter, Emily." Frank's heart raced. Calls from the hospital never brought good news. "What happened? Is she all right?" "She's fine, sir. Actually, I'm calling to let you know your daughter's surgery has been approved and is scheduled for next week." Frank nearly dropped the phone. "Approved? But the insurance—" "It wasn't the insurance, sir. An anonymous donor has covered all the costs, including post-op care." "There must be some mistake. Who would do such a thing?" "I can't share details, sir, but I assure you there's no mistake. Would you like to confirm the surgery?" Frank could barely speak. After months of despair, finally, a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, of course. I'll be there in an hour." He rushed to the hospital, hardly believing what was happening. When he reached Emily's room, she was beaming. "Dad, did you hear? I get to have the surgery," she said, hugging him with all her strength. "I heard, sweetheart. But I don't understand how—" "It doesn't matter how, Dad. What matters is everything's going to be okay." Frank stayed at the hospital until evening, trying to uncover who had paid for the surgery, but every staff member gave the same answer: an anonymous donor. By the time he left, he was so overwhelmed he almost forgot he still had work to do. But when he arrived at the company, reality hit him hard. "Miller, we need to talk," the manager said, motioning him into the office. "Yes, sir. Yesterday's delay was the last straw. Clients are complaining about your punctuality. I can't keep you on the team." Frank felt the ground drop beneath him. "Sir, please, it was just one delay, and I explained there was an emergency. There have been multiple delays these past months, Miller. You're not as efficient as you used to be. Collect your things." Frank left the office carrying his belongings in a cardboard box. The irony was cruel. On the same day his daughter's surgery was secured, he'd lost his job. On the drive home, he stopped at a gas station to think. How would he explain to Emily that he was unemployed? How would he cover even the basic bills? The surgery was paid for, but what about after? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Meanwhile, Catherine sat in her office, reading the report her assistant had prepared on Frank. The details confirmed everything she'd sensed. A hard-working, honest man with no criminal record, raising his daughter alone after his wife left when they discovered the child's health issues. "Miss Parker, Mr. Richard Thompson is here for the meeting," Jennifer announced over the intercom. Catherine sighed and set the report aside. Richard was her ex-husband and a minority partner in the company, a presence she tolerated only out of legal obligation. "Send him in." Richard entered the room with that fake smile Catherine knew so well. "Catherine, darling, how are you?" "What do you want, Richard?" she said without ceremony. "Straight to the point, as always. I came to propose a broader partnership. I have investors interested in expanding the company." "I'm not interested in new partners." "Maybe you should be. The market is competitive and you can't run everything alone forever." Catherine looked at her ex-husband with disdain. She knew that behind his polite words lay a veiled threat. "The company is doing just fine, thank you. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." "Think about my proposal, Catherine. It would be a shame if you had to face unnecessary difficulties." After Richard left, Catherine felt uneasy. She knew her ex-husband's tactics all too well. He wouldn't give up easily. Frank came home to find an even larger pile of bills waiting for him. He sat at the kitchen table and began calculating how many days he could survive on his savings. The result was discouraging. Emily called from the hospital asking about his day. "How was work, Dad?" Frank hesitated. He didn't want to worry his daughter before her surgery. "It was different, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Nervous about the surgery." "Dad, are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." "I'm just tired. Get some rest, I'll be there early tomorrow." "Dad, thank you for everything. I know you did all you could to make this surgery happen." Frank swallowed hard. If only Emily knew he hadn't done anything, that someone had saved her life without him even knowing who it was. That night, Catherine couldn't sleep. She stood on the apartment balcony, gazing at the city and thinking about Frank. There was something about their encounter that deeply unsettled her. Maybe it was the fact that she had seen genuine kindness after so long surrounded by self-serving people. She picked up the report on Frank and read it again. She discovered he had lost his job the same day the surgery was approved. The news worried her. She had paid for the surgery wanting to help, but hadn't considered the consequences of her gesture. The next morning, Frank was at the hospital overseeing preparations for Emily's surgery when a nurse called him. "Mr. Frank, the anonymous benefactor who paid for the surgery would like to speak with you." Frank's eyes widened. "They're here?" "Actually, it's a woman. She's waiting in the conference room on the 3rd floor." Frank climbed the stairs with his heart racing. When he opened the door, he found Catherine sitting at the table wearing the same dark blazer from the day before. "Catherine," he said, stunned. "Hello, Frank. Please, sit down." Frank stood frozen in the doorway, processing the information. "You paid for Emily's surgery?" "I did. And before you say anything, know that I expect nothing in return." Frank entered the room and sat down, still in shock. "But why? You don't even know me. Yesterday on the highway you helped me without expecting anything in return. When I learned about your daughter, I wanted to repay the favor. Catherine, I can't accept this. It's too much money. Frank, your daughter needs this surgery. You'd do anything for her, wouldn't you? I would, but... Then accept it. Consider it a gift from someone who lost her daughter and knows the value of a devoted father. Frank fell silent, absorbing her words. You lost a daughter. Catherine looked away, clearly wrestling with difficult emotions. 5 years ago, she was your Emily's age. I'm so sorry. Thank you. That's why I know how you feel. And I know you'd do anything to save your daughter. Frank felt his eyes filling with tears. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. Just take good care of Emily. There was a moment of silence between them, heavy with emotion. Catherine, can I ask you something? Of course. You said you were driving alone yesterday. Don't you have a driver? Catherine smiled sadly. I do. But sometimes I need to be alone, you know, to escape my life for a little while. I understand. Sometimes our lives aren't what people see on the outside, right? Exactly. Frank stood up to leave, but paused at the door. Catherine, if you ever need anything, I know I can't offer much, but thank you, Frank. That means a lot to me. Emily's surgery was a complete success. Frank spent the entire day at the hospital, praying and pacing the halls. When the doctor finally came out with good news, Frank nearly collapsed with relief. The surgery went perfectly, Mr. Miller. Your daughter will make a full recovery. Frank entered the room where Emily was waking up from anesthesia. When she saw him, she gave a weak smile. Did everything go okay, Dad? Everything's fine, sweetheart. You're going to be just fine. Dad, who paid for the surgery? It wasn't you, was it? Frank hesitated. Emily had always been sharp. How did you know? Because I saw how worried you were about money, and then suddenly someone steps in to pay. Who was it? A very special person I met yesterday, a woman who understands the value of family. Did she lose someone? Frank was surprised by his daughter's insight. How did you... Dad, only someone who's been through something like that would do something like this. I'd like to meet her. Maybe one day you will, sweetheart. Meanwhile, Catherine was in her office facing a tense meeting. Richard had returned, but this time he wasn't alone. He'd brought 2 men in suits she didn't recognize. Catherine, let me introduce Mr. Donald Roberts and Mr. William Harrison, investors interested in the company. Catherine greeted them coldly. I don't recall scheduling this meeting. It's an informal discussion, Ms. Parker, said Donald. We came to present a proposal that might interest you. I'm not interested in selling my company. Perhaps you'll change your mind when you hear about the challenges ahead, said William with a threatening smile. Catherine felt a chill down her spine. There was something sinister about these men. What kind of challenges? The market is unpredictable, Ms. Parker. Contracts can be cancelled, suppliers can run into trouble, employees might seek other opportunities, said Richard. Catherine understood the threat perfectly. You can leave, this meeting is over. Think about our offer, Catherine. It'd be a shame to see everything you've built fall apart, said Richard as they walked out. After they left, Catherine stood alone in her office, feeling the weight of the threat. She knew Richard was capable of anything to get what he wanted. Frank returned home after spending the day at the hospital. The good news about Emily had lifted the weight from his heart, but his financial reality remained harsh. He was unemployed and needed work urgently. He'd sent resumes to several transport companies, but the responses were always the same. No openings, or they required experience with modern equipment he didn't have. After a week of fruitless searching, Frank was desperate. Bills kept piling up, and his savings were nearly gone. That's when Emily, now discharged from the hospital, made a suggestion that embarrassed him. Dad, why don't you reach out to that woman who paid for my surgery? Emily, I can't bother her. She's already done so much for us. But Dad, maybe she could help you find work. She seems like an important person. I don't want her to think I'm taking advantage. Dad, asking for help isn't taking advantage. It's accepting that sometimes we need each other. Frank looked at his daughter, amazed by her wisdom. When did you get so smart? I learned from the best father in the world, said Emily, hugging Frank. That same week, Catherine was facing the first attacks promised by Richard. 2 major clients cancelled contracts without a plausible explanation, and one of her main suppliers reported unexpected delivery issues. Ms. Parker, this can't be a coincidence, said Jennifer, entering the office with yet another contract cancellation. It's not a coincidence, it's sabotage, replied Catherine, studying the documents. What are we going to do? We're going to fight. Richard forgot I didn't get this far by being weak. Catherine spent the following days trying to counter the attacks on the company, but the situation was becoming unsustainable. That's when she received an unexpected call. Ms. Parker, this is Frank Miller. Catherine felt a mix of surprise and relief hearing his voice. Frank, how's Emily? She's doing great, thanks to you. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I'd like to thank you in person if you have the time. Catherine hesitated. She had been avoiding social contact because of the company's situation, but there was something in Frank's voice that reassured her. Of course. Where would you like to meet? You choose. I'll adjust to your schedule. How about that coffee shop near the hospital, tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon? Perfect. See you tomorrow. Catherine hung up, feeling strangely relieved. Over the past few days, she had felt completely alone facing Richard's attacks. Maybe a conversation with Frank could distract her for a while. The next day, Frank arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. He was nervous, wearing his best clothes, which were still quite simple compared to the elegant setting of the place. When Catherine arrived, Frank was surprised to see her looking different. She seemed tired, worried, nothing like the confident woman he had met. Catherine, thank you for agreeing to meet me, said Frank, standing to greet her. Thank you for calling. How's Emily? She's doing well, recovering very quickly. Actually, she was the one who insisted I reach out to you. She seems like a very smart girl. Yeah, sometimes I think she's more mature than I am, Frank said, smiling. They ordered coffee and talked about Emily's recovery. Catherine could tell Frank was nervous, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Frank, you seem worried about something. Frank sighed and decided to be direct. Catherine, I lost my job. The same day Emily's surgery was approved. I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I didn't want you to think I was trying to ask for more favors. Catherine was touched by his honesty. And how are things now? Tough. I've been looking for work, but it's complicated. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to get back on my feet. Frank, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why did you help me that day on the highway? You didn't even know me. Frank thought for a moment before answering. My mother always said we help people not because they deserve it, but because it's the right thing to do. And maybe because I know what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn. Catherine felt her eyes filling with tears. It had been so long since she'd heard such sincere words. Frank, can I tell you something? Of course. That day on the highway, I was running away, driving alone for the first time in years, trying to escape a life that suffocates me. Everyone needs to escape sometimes. Yeah, but meeting you in that moment, it was like a reminder that there are still good people in the world. Frank stayed silent, feeling the weight of her words. Catherine, can I ask what you do for work? Catherine hesitated. She didn't want Frank to see her differently. I run a logistics company. Nothing too exciting. Logistics? You work in transportation? Yes, among other things. Frank grew thoughtful. You know, used to work in transportation 20 years ago. I know a lot of people in the business. Really? Yeah. If you ever need recommendations for reliable drivers, I can help. Catherine smiled, touched by the offer. Thank you, Frank. I'll keep that in mind. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. When they left the cafe, Catherine felt lighter than she had in weeks. There was something about Frank that put her at ease, a serenity she didn't find in her corporate world. Frank, I'd love to meet Emily, she said as they said goodbye. She'd be thrilled. She talks about you every day. How about I visit her this weekend? That would be wonderful. She'll be over the moon. That night, Catherine made a decision. She called Jennifer at home. "Jennifer, I need you to research job openings for truck drivers, reputable, well-established companies." "May I ask why, Ms. Parker?" "I want to help someone. And Jennifer, I also need you to discreetly look into the companies that cancelled our contracts. Something tells me we'll find interesting connections." "Understood. I'll take care of it first thing tomorrow." On Saturday, Catherine visited Frank and Emily at their home. It was a simple house, but clean and cozy. Emily was exactly as Frank had described, smart, affectionate, and surprisingly mature. "Thank you for saving my life," Emily said, hugging Catherine. "Thank you for having such a special father," Catherine replied, moved. During the visit, Catherine observed the dynamic between father and daughter. There was as much love in that small home as was missing in her own luxurious apartment. "Catherine, can I ask about your family?" Emily said with typical teenage curiosity. Catherine hesitated, but decided to be honest. "I don't have a family, Emily. I lost my daughter a few years ago and I divorced soon after." "I'm so sorry. What was she like?" "Like you. Bright, curious, full of life." "How did she—" Emily started to ask, but Frank gently interrupted. "Emily, don't ask Catherine difficult questions." "It's okay, Frank," Catherine said. "She was hit by a car when she was leaving school. I should have picked her up, but I was in an important meeting." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. "That's why you helped my dad that day," Emily said with a wisdom that surprised Catherine. "Maybe. Or maybe because I recognized someone who'd do anything for their child." Emily stood up and hugged Catherine again. "Now you have a family again." "Us?" Catherine couldn't hold back her tears. It had been so long since she felt part of something bigger. During dinner, Frank shared more about his struggles to find work. Catherine listened carefully, and an idea began forming in her mind. "Frank, you said you know a lot of drivers in the transportation business?" "I do. Why?" "I'm having some trouble at the company. Some suppliers are giving me problems. Contracts being cancelled for no clear reason." "That sounds like sabotage," Frank said, concerned. "That's exactly what it is. My ex-husband is trying to force me to sell my share of the company." "And you don't want to sell?" "Not a chance. That company is everything I've built." Frank grew thoughtful. "You know, Catherine, over the years I noticed strange things at my old job. Some co-workers talked about missing shipments, altered documents." Catherine leaned in immediately. "What kind of things?" "Nothing too specific. But there were always some drivers who managed to get the best routes, the best schedules, without having the necessary experience." "Do you think there was corruption?" "I think so. And some of these companies supplied big corporations, maybe even yours." Catherine felt a twinge of excitement. Maybe Frank could help her in a way she hadn't imagined. "Frank, do you remember any names? Specific companies?" "A few. Why?" "Because maybe you can help me figure out how my ex-husband is sabotaging my company." Frank was surprised by the proposal. "Catherine, I don't know if I can help with something so complicated." "Frank, you know the business, you know people. Sometimes the most valuable information comes from those working on the ground, not from those in the office." Emily, who'd been quietly listening, chimed in. "Dad, you always say we should help people when we can. Catherine helped us when we needed it most." Frank looked at his daughter and then at Catherine. "What exactly would you like me to do?" "Talk to your contacts. Find out if there's anything strange going on with shipments to my company. In return, I'm offering you a job." "Catherine, I don't want you giving me work out of pity." "It's not pity, Frank. It's recognizing value. You have 20 years of experience. You know people. You're honest. Those are qualities I need in my company." Frank fell silent, considering the offer. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But Frank, I really need your help, and I think you need the opportunity." That night, after Catherine left, Frank and Emily talked at length about the proposal. "Dad, I think you should accept," said Emily. "I don't want her to think I'm taking advantage of the situation." "Dad, she's not offering charity. She's offering a fair exchange. You help her, she helps you." "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. Her world is very different from ours." "So what? You always taught me that a person's character matters more than their bank account. Frank smiled. His daughter always knew how to get straight to the point. You're right, I'll call her tomorrow. The next day, Frank called Catherine and accepted the offer. She scheduled a meeting to introduce him to the company and explain the situation in more detail. When Frank arrived at the corporate building where Catherine's company was located, he was struck by its size and elegance. It was a world completely different from what he knew. At the reception, the attendant gave him a strange look when he said he had a meeting with Ms. Parker. Are you sure? Ms. Parker doesn't usually meet with people without a formal appointment, said the receptionist, clearly judging Frank by his simple appearance. She scheduled the meeting with me yesterday, Frank replied, remaining polite despite his discomfort. The receptionist made a reluctant call, and Catherine came down personally to get Frank, causing visible shock among the staff. Frank, I'm sorry about that. Let's go upstairs, said Catherine, clearly annoyed by how he had been treated. In the elevator, Catherine apologized again. Frank, I'm sorry for how you were treated. That won't happen again. Don't worry, I'm used to it. You shouldn't be. And in my company, it won't happen. When they reached Catherine's office, Frank was impressed by the panoramic view of the city. It's beautiful up here, he remarked. Sometimes I forget to look. I get so focused on work that I don't see what's around me. Catherine showed Frank a summary of the company's situation. Cancelled contracts, supplier issues, Richard's veiled threats. This is more serious than I thought, said Frank, studying the documents. Yes, and it's getting worse. Yesterday I found out that 3 of my best employees received job offers they couldn't refuse from competing companies. All connected to your ex-husband? Indirectly, yes. He's setting up an operation to force me to sell. Frank grew thoughtful, processing the information. Catherine, some of these companies that cancelled contracts, I know them. They're long-time clients who would never cancel without a very strong reason, or without serious pressure. Exactly. Let me talk to a few contacts. Maybe I can find out what's happening behind the scenes. For the first time in weeks, Catherine felt a glimmer of hope. Frank, are you sure you want to get involved in this? It could be dangerous. Catherine, you saved my daughter's life. There's nothing I wouldn't do to repay that. It's not about repayment, Frank. It's partnership. Frank smiled, liking the sound of the word partnership. Then let's work together. In the following days, Frank began working discreetly, speaking with old colleagues and making connections with drivers from various companies. What he uncovered was worse than Catherine had imagined. Catherine, you need to hear this, Frank said, entering her office with a serious expression. What did you find? Your ex-husband isn't acting alone. There's a well-organized scheme involving several transportation companies. They divert shipments, falsify documents, create deliberate problems to force supplier changes. Catherine was shocked by the revelation. Do you have proof? I have witnesses. Drivers who were forced to participate under threat of losing their jobs. Would they be willing to testify officially? Some would if they had job protection guarantees. Catherine stood and paced the office, processing the information. Frank, this is bigger than just trying to force me to sell. It's a corruption scheme that could involve millions. Exactly. And you seem to be the main target, because your company is one of the largest and most honest in the market. What do we do now? First, we gather as much evidence as possible. Then, we decide how to proceed. Catherine agreed, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Frank, do you realize the risk you're taking? I do, but I also know that if we do nothing, honest people will keep getting hurt. That evening, Catherine went to Frank and Emily's house for dinner, as had become their routine lately. Her presence had brought a new joy to their family. How was your day? Emily asked, serving the dinner she'd prepared. Complicated, Catherine replied. Your father uncovered some very serious things about the company. Will you be able to fix it? Emily asked, worried. We'll try, sweetheart, Frank said, but it won't be easy. Dad, remember what you always tell me, that what's right isn't always easy, but it's always right. Catherine looked at Emily with admiration. Your daughter is very wise, Frank. She teaches me every day, Frank replied, proud. After dinner, while Emily did her homework, Frank and Catherine discussed their next steps. Catherine, I have a proposal, Frank said. Go on. What if I pretend to be interested in joining the scheme? I could infiltrate it and gather more information. Catherine was alarmed by the suggestion. Frank, that's too dangerous. If they find out, it's a calculated risk. I know these people, how they think. I don't know. What if something goes wrong? Frank took Catherine's hand, a gesture that surprised and comforted her at once. Catherine, trust me. I know what I'm doing. Catherine looked into Frank's eyes and saw determination, but also care. She knew she could trust him. All right, but you don't act alone. Any move, you tell me first. Deal. The following week, Frank began executing the plan. He reached out to some of those involved in the scheme, pretending to be interested in better opportunities for work. The response was immediate. Within 2 days, Frank was contacted by a middleman who set up a meeting at a truck stop on the outskirts of the city. Catherine, they took the bait, Frank said over the phone. I have a meeting tomorrow night. Frank, I'm scared. What if it's a trap? It won't be. They need people like me. I'll use that to our advantage. Promise you'll keep me updated. I am. I'll tell you everything after the meeting. On the night of the meeting, Frank arrived at the truck stop, nervous but determined. The man waiting for him was someone he knew from his working days, Brian Foster, a driver who always seemed to have more money than he should. Frank, good to see you, man, Brian said, greeting him. Hey, Brian, heard you've got some interesting opportunities. I do, but first I need to know if I can trust you. Can trust? Come on, you've known me for years. I've always been discreet. That's true, but things are more serious now. The bosses don't tolerate mistakes. Frank feigned just the right amount of interest and concern. What kind of work is it? Regular transport, just with some adjustments to the paperwork, and sometimes unscheduled stops. Got it. Does it pay well? Very well. 3 times the usual rate. Frank asked the right questions to gather information without raising suspicion. He got names, locations, schedules. It was exactly what Catherine needed. When can I start? Frank asked. Next week. But Frank, once you're in, there's no backing out. The bosses don't like former employees talking. A chill ran down Frank's spine, but he kept his composure. Understood, total discretion. Exactly. I'll call you with the details. When Frank got home, he immediately called Catherine. I got important information. Can I come over? Of course, I'll be waiting. Frank went to Catherine's apartment and told her everything he'd uncovered. She was amazed by how much he'd managed to learn. Frank, this is incredible. Now we have names, locations, times. And there's more. They want me to start next week. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Catherine, this is our chance to catch them in the act. What if they find out you're working with me? They won't. Catherine fell silent, weighing their options. Frank, you have a family. You have Emily. I can't let you take such a risk. Catherine, Emily is alive because of you. And these men are ruining honest people's lives. I have to do this. Catherine looked at Frank and saw the determination in his eyes. It was the same determination she'd seen that day on the highway when he stopped to help her, even knowing he'd lose money. All right, but on one condition. You wear a wire. We need concrete evidence. Deal. They spent the rest of the night planning every detail of the operation. Catherine arranged the recording equipment, and Frank continued infiltrating the scheme. The next day, Frank told Emily about the plan, leaving out the most dangerous details. Dad, are you sure it's not dangerous? I'm sure, sweetheart, and Catherine is helping me with everything. She's really important to us, isn't she, Dad? Frank was surprised by the question. She is, honey. Why? Because ever since she came into our lives, you've been happier, and so have I. Frank hadn't stopped to think about it, but Emily was right. Catherine's presence had brought light into their lives. She's lost a lot too, Emily. I think we're all helping each other. Dad, do you like her? Frank was caught off guard by his daughter's directness. Emily? Dad, it's okay to like someone. You deserve to be happy. It's complicated, sweetheart. We come from very different worlds. Dad, love knows no social class. Frank smiled. His daughter always surprised him with her wisdom. The following week, Frank began working on the corruption scheme. His first job was to transport a shipment that was officially supposed to go to one destination, but was actually delivered elsewhere. Frank recorded everything: conversations, instructions, forged documents. It was exactly what Catherine needed to expose the scheme. "Catherine, I have enough evidence to bring down the entire operation," Frank said, handing over the recordings. "Frank, you were incredible. With this proof, we can dismantle the whole scheme. What do we do now?" "Now we need to decide how to proceed. We have enough evidence, but we must plan the best strategy." Catherine was reviewing the recordings when her phone rang. It was Richard. "Catherine, I need to speak with you urgently." "About what?" "About your recent activities. Maybe it's better we talk in person." Catherine felt a chill down her spine. There was something in Richard's voice that worried her. "Where?" "My office. Tonight." "Richard, if this is a threat..." "It's not a threat, Catherine, just friendly advice." Richard hung up, leaving Catherine uneasy. She immediately called Frank. "Frank, I think they found something out." "Why?" Richard called. "He wants to meet tonight." "Catherine, don't go. It's obviously a trap." "I have to. If they suspect something, I need to know what they know. Then I'll go with you." "Frank, you can't. If they see us together, they'll know you're working with me." Frank fell silent, knowing she was right. "At least take security with you." "I will. And Frank, if anything happens to me, you have all the evidence. Keep going." "Catherine, don't talk like that. I'm being realistic. These men are dangerous." That night, Catherine met Richard with a security detail. His office was dark, only a single light over the desk where he sat. "Catherine, glad you came." "Richard, let's get to the point. What do you want?" "To know why you're investigating my activities." Catherine kept her expression blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Catherine, please. We know you hired someone to infiltrate our operations." "Your operations? What operations?" Richard smiled coldly. "Don't play dumb. We know about the trucker you hired." Catherine's heart raced, but she stayed calm. "Richard, you're delusional." "Am I? Then why is Frank Miller making deliveries for our network?" Catherine froze. They knew about Frank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Catherine, our patience is running out. You have 48 hours to accept our buyout offer. Otherwise, your new trucker friend might have accidents." The threat was clear and direct. Catherine felt fear, but also intense anger. "If you lay a finger on Frank, You'll what? Call the police? With what proof?" Catherine realized she was cornered. Richard knew about Frank, and now he was in danger. "What exactly do you want?" "Your company, and your silence about our activities." "And if I agree?" "Frank stays safe. You get a fair price for your company and can start a new life." Catherine knew she had no choice. Frank's life was at stake. "I need time to think." 48 hours, Catherine, not a minute more." Catherine left the meeting desperate. She called Frank immediately. "Frank, they know about you. You're in danger." "Catherine, calm down. Tell me what happened." She recounted every detail of the conversation with Richard. Frank was silent for a moment. "Catherine, don't accept their offer." "Frank, they threatened you." "I can't let anything happen to you." "Catherine, if you give in now, they'll keep doing this to others. But if I don't, they could hurt you." "Catherine, I knew the risks when I agreed to help." "Frank, I can't lose you," said Catherine, surprised by her own words. There was silence on the phone. Frank was also taken aback by her statement. "Catherine, Frank, these past few days made me realize something. You and Emily have become my family. I can't lose you." Frank felt his heart race. He too had noticed his feelings for Catherine had deepened. "Catherine, I don't want to lose you either." "Then let's find a solution together." They arranged to meet at Frank's house to plan their next steps. When Catherine arrived, Emily immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. Frank and Catherine explained the situation, softening the more dangerous details. "So they want Catherine to give up everything because of you, Dad?" Emily asked. That's right, Catherine replied. Emily thought for a moment. What if we used the recordings Dad made? What do you mean, sweetheart? Well, if they're afraid you'll expose their scheme, it's because it could hurt them, right? Catherine and Frank exchanged glances. Emily had a point. Go on, Catherine urged. What if instead of hiding you did the opposite? Threatened to reveal everything? Emily, that's too dangerous, Frank said. More dangerous than waiting for them to attack. Catherine was impressed by Emily's reasoning. You know, she's right. If we stay defensive, they'll always have the upper hand. Catherine, it's too risky, Frank insisted. Frank, they already know about us. We have nothing left to lose. Yes, we do. Our lives, Emily interjected again. Dad, you always taught me that running from problems doesn't solve them. Frank looked at his daughter, then at Catherine. He knew they were both right. All right. But how do we do this? Catherine began outlining a plan. First, we copy all the evidence and store it in safe places. Then, we send a copy to Richard with an ultimatum. He stops the scheme or we go public. And if he refuses, then we actually go public. Press, authorities, everything. Frank reluctantly agreed. But Emily stays out of this. If things get dangerous, she goes to a relative's house. Dad, I don't have relatives and I'm not leaving you two. Emily, Dad, we're a family now. Families stick together. Catherine felt tears welling up. The word family held new meaning in her life. They spent the night copying evidence and planning every detail. Catherine used her contacts to ensure copies of the recordings were sent to trusted lawyers and journalists to be released if anything happened to them. The next morning, Catherine called Richard. Richard, I have a counteroffer. I'm listening. You shut down the corruption scheme and leave my company alone. In return, I won't release the evidence I have. A long silence followed. What evidence? Recordings, documents, witnesses, everything I need to prove your scheme. Catherine, you're bluffing. Richard, you have 1 hour to respond. After that, the evidence goes to the press. She hung up, a mix of fear and determination in her chest. It was a gamble, but their only chance. Frank paced nervously around the room. Catherine, do you think this will work? I don't know, but it was this, or accept their terms. What if they turn violent? That's why I warned some journalists. If something happens to us, the truth will still come out. The phone rang exactly 1 hour later. It was Richard. Catherine, you don't know who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, and you know who you're dealing with too. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Richard, because if it's not, everyone will find out what you've been up to. Richard hung up without responding. Catherine, Frank, and Emily waited tensely for what would happen next. For the next 24 hours, nothing happened. No calls, no threats, no strange movements. It was as if Richard and his accomplices had simply vanished. Did it work? Emily asked. I don't know, Catherine replied. Maybe they're planning something. On the third day, Catherine received an unexpected call from one of the clients who had cancelled their contract. Miss Parker, I'd like to reschedule our meeting. Perhaps we can reconsider our decision. Catherine was surprised. Of course. When would be convenient? Later today, if possible. For the rest of the day, Catherine received similar calls from other clients. They all wanted to reconsider their decisions to cancel contracts. Frank, I think it worked, Catherine said excitedly. How so? The clients are coming back. It seems Richard gave up on the scheme. Frank was happy but still cautious. Or he's planning something bigger. Catherine considered the possibility but chose to be optimistic. Let's wait a few more days before celebrating. A week passed without incident. The clients returned, the suppliers resumed deliveries, and Catherine's business was back to normal. Frank was now officially working for Catherine, coordinating the truck fleet and using his experience to improve the company's logistics. Catherine, can I suggest some changes to the operation? Frank said during a meeting. Of course. What changes? Well, I know more efficient routes and I have connections with very good drivers looking for honest work. Make whatever changes you think are necessary. I trust your judgment. Frank was moved by Catherine's trust. "Thank you, I won't let you down." "I know you won't." As they worked together, Frank and Catherine developed a partnership that went beyond the professional. There was a harmony between them that made work smooth and enjoyable. Emily, who had returned to school, loved hearing about her father's work and Catherine's projects. She felt part of something important. "Dad, Catherine, can I suggest something?" Emily said during dinner. "Of course, sweetheart. What if you created a program to help truckers' children who need surgery?" Catherine was impressed by the idea. "Emily, that's brilliant. How did you think of it?" "Well, I know how hard it is when you need surgery and don't have the money. And I know many truckers are in the same situation Dad was in." Frank looked at his daughter with pride. "Emily, you're amazing." "It's a wonderful idea," Catherine agreed. "We could set up a special fund in the company." Emily's idea quickly became a real project. Catherine allocated a portion of the company's profits to a medical assistance fund for truckers' families. "Frank, would you coordinate this project?" Catherine suggested. "It would be an honor." The project took shape quickly. Frank used his connections to identify families in need, and Catherine provided the necessary resources. The first family to benefit was a colleague of Frank's whose son needed orthopedic surgery. When they learned of the help, the family's gratitude was overwhelming. "Frank, thank you so much. I don't know how to thank you," the colleague said, tears in his eyes. "Don't thank me. Thank Catherine and my daughter Emily, who came up with this idea." "Then I'll thank her in person." When the family went to thank Catherine personally, she was moved. Seeing the concrete result of the help reminded her why she had started working in the first place. "Catherine," said the truck driver's wife, "you saved my son's life. How can I repay you?" "You don't need to repay me. Just take good care of your family." "I will, and I'll tell everyone about your kindness." The story of the assistance fund began to spread among the truck drivers. Other drivers approached Frank to find out how they could contribute or qualify for help. "Frank, this is turning into something bigger than we imagined," said Catherine. "It's true. How about we expand the project?" "How so?" "We could create a cooperative. The truck drivers contribute a small monthly amount and are entitled to assistance when they need it." Catherine loved the idea. "Frank, you have an incredible business vision. Why did you never think of starting your own venture?" "I never had the opportunity, and it's too hard to do alone." "Well, now you're not alone." The cooperative was officially established a few months later. Frank became the general coordinator, and Catherine provided the necessary business support. The initiative caught the media's attention. Several newspapers ran stories about the company that created an assistance system for truck drivers. "Catherine, did you see the article in the paper?" asked Emily, excited. "Yes, I did. We're famous," replied Catherine, smiling. "Famous for a good cause," added Frank. The positive buzz brought new clients to Catherine's company. Many businesses wanted to partner with a company that had social responsibility. "Frank, the company has grown 40% since we started the project," said Catherine, showing the numbers. "That's amazing. It proves that doing good can also be good for business." "Exactly. And it proves you were right when you said some things are more important than money." Frank smiled, remembering the words he had spoken the day they met. "You know, Catherine, back then I never imagined those words would lead me here. Neither did I imagine that a car breakdown would change my life completely." They were having this conversation in the office when Emily came home from school with exciting news. "Dad, Catherine, do you know today is the anniversary of the day you met?" Frank and Catherine exchanged glances, surprised. "It's true," said Frank. "It's been exactly a year." "And look how our lives have changed," added Catherine. "For the better," said Emily. "Much better." Emily was right. In a year they had become an unconventional family, created an important social project and transformed a business. "You know what else has changed?" said Catherine, looking at Frank. "What?" "I learned to trust people again. And I learned that family isn't just who you're born with, but who you choose to stay with." Frank felt his heart race. For weeks he had wanted to have a serious talk with Catherine about the feelings he had developed for her. "Catherine, can I talk to you in private?" "Of course." They stepped out onto the office balcony, leaving Emily to do her homework. "Catherine, there's something I need to tell you." "Go ahead." Frank took a deep breath before speaking. "I've fallen in love with you." Catherine was silent for a moment, processing his words. "Frank, I know we're from different worlds. I know it might seem complicated, but I can't pretend I don't feel this anymore." Catherine stepped closer to Frank and took his hands. "Frank, I've fallen in love with you too." "Really? Since that day on the highway, you've shown me there are still good people in the world. You restored my faith in humanity." Frank hugged her, feeling a happiness he hadn't known in years. "Catherine, I love you." "I love you too, Frank." They kissed, sealing a love that had been born from an act of kindness and grown through partnership and mutual trust. When they went back inside, Emily looked at them and smiled. "It was about time," she said, making them both laugh. "Emily, how did you—" "Dad, anyone could see you were in love, only you two didn't realize it." Catherine laughed and hugged Emily. "Now we're officially a family." "We always were," Emily replied. "It's just official now." In the following months, Frank and Catherine planned their wedding. It would be a simple but meaningful ceremony, attended by the friends they had made along their journey. The social project continued to grow. The Truckers Cooperative now had over 500 members and had helped dozens of families. "Frank, I got an interesting proposal today," said Catherine. "What proposal?" "The government wants to use our cooperative model as a pilot for a national program." Frank was amazed. "That's incredible. It means our idea could help thousands of people." "Exactly. And you'd be the program's general coordinator." "Catherine, this is a dream. I never imagined I could contribute to something so big. Frank, you've always been special. You just needed the right opportunity." The wedding ceremony was emotional. Frank, Catherine, and Emily officially became a family, surrounded by all the friends they had gained during their journey. In his speech, Frank spoke about how a simple act of kindness had transformed their lives. "A year ago, I stopped to help a woman with a broken-down car. I never imagined that moment would change my life forever. Not just because I gained a wonderful wife, but because I learned that doing good always pays off, even when we don't expect a reward." Catherine also gave a heartfelt speech. "Frank taught me that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we can do for others. And Emily taught me that family is who stands by us in tough times." The celebration was simple but joyful, with many truckers who had benefited from the social project in attendance. During the party, one of the truckers approached Frank. "Frank, I have something to tell you." "Go ahead." "Remember William, the guy who recruited you for the scheme?" "I do." "He was arrested last week, along with 10 others involved in the operation." Frank was surprised. "What happened?" "Seems someone handed evidence to the police. The whole scheme was dismantled." Frank looked at Catherine, who had overheard the conversation. "Was it our recordings?" "I think so," Catherine replied. "Even after Richard backed out, I kept the evidence with the authorities in case they tried something again." "So it's really over," Frank said, relieved. "It is." And justice was served. Their honeymoon was spent at the beach house Catherine had bought. It was a simple but cozy place where they could relax and plan their future. "Frank, are you happy?" Catherine asked as they walked along the beach. "Happier than I ever thought I could be, even with my corporate world to deal with." "Catherine, your world became my world too, and mine became yours." "It's true. And what an amazing world we've built together." When they returned from their honeymoon, they found Emily excited about some news. "Dad, Catherine, did you know our story became a book?" "What do you mean?" Frank asked. "A journalist wrote a book about you. It's called Love Born on the Highway." Catherine laughed. "Quite a dramatic title." "But true," Frank said. "Our story really did begin on the road." The book became a success, and the royalties were donated to the Truckers Cooperative. Frank and Catherine's story inspired many people to practice acts of kindness. "Do you know what moves me the most about all of this?" said Catherine. "What?" knowing that our story can inspire others to be better, and that a simple act of kindness can change lives, added Frank. 5 years later, the cooperative had expanded across the country. Frank had become a national reference in social responsibility, and Catherine had transformed her company into a model of sustainable business. Emily, now 20 years old, was studying business administration and already worked at the cooperative during her breaks. "Dad, Catherine, I have news," Emily said during a family dinner. "What news?" asked Frank. "I've been accepted into a master's program in social management. I want to study how to expand our project even further." Catherine and Frank were proud. "Emily, you're on the right path," said Catherine. "I learned from the best teachers," Emily replied. "You taught me that true success is when we can help others succeed too." During a national conference on social responsibility, Frank was invited to share his story. On stage, in front of hundreds of business leaders, he spoke about the transformation a single act of kindness can bring. "Ladies and gentlemen, 6 years ago, I was just a struggling truck driver. Today I stand here speaking to you because someone showed me that kindness and business can go hand in hand. Not only is it possible to do good while doing business, but it's the only sustainable way to grow." The audience gave him a standing ovation. In the front row, Catherine and Emily watched with pride. After the talk, several business leaders approached Frank to learn how to implement social projects in their companies. "Frank, you've become an inspiration," Catherine said on the way home. "We've become an inspiration," Frank corrected. "None of this would have been possible if we hadn't worked together." "And because you had the courage to stop and help a stranger on the highway," added Catherine. "And because you had the courage to trust a stranger," Frank replied. That evening, the three of them sat on the couch at home, watching the news coverage of the conference on TV. "Do you know what amazes me the most about our whole story?" Emily said. "What?" Frank and Catherine asked in unison. "How it all started with something so simple, a broken-down car, a person in need, another person willing to help. And look what it became." Catherine and Frank exchanged glances, reflecting on the journey they'd taken. "Emily is right," said Catherine. "The greatest transformations begin with small gestures, and with people willing to do what's right, even when it's hard," Frank added. A few months later, Frank received an unexpected call. "Mr. Frank Miller, this is the presidential office." Frank was stunned. "Yes, speaking. You've been invited to receive a Medal of Honor for your service to society." Frank could hardly believe what he was hearing. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake, sir. The ceremony will be held next week." When Frank told Catherine and Emily, they were both moved. "Dad, you deserve this and more," Emily said. "Frank, I'm so proud of you," said Catherine. "Of us," Frank corrected. "Everything we've achieved, we've done together." The ceremony in the Capitol was emotional. Frank received the medal from the president, and his story was shared across the nation. "Frank Miller represents the best of our people," the president said during the ceremony. "His story proves that kindness and determination can transform not just individual lives, but society as a whole." After the ceremony, Frank, Catherine, and Emily visited Congress, where Frank was invited to speak about public policies for social welfare. "Who would have thought a simple truck driver would be speaking at Congress?" commented Frank. "You were never just a simple truck driver," said Catherine. "You've always been extraordinary. You just needed the chance to show it." On the plane back to New York City, the three of them talked about future plans. "Dad, Catherine, I have an idea to expand the project even further," said Emily. "What idea?" asked Catherine. "How about we create an international foundation? Take our model to other countries?" Frank was impressed by his daughter's ambition. "Emily, that would be incredible, but it's very complex." "Dad, you always told me we shouldn't be afraid to dream big." Catherine smiled. "Emily is right. If our model works here, it can work elsewhere too." "Then let's start studying the feasibility," said Frank. 2 years later, the Frank Miller and Catherine Parker Foundation was officially launched. The first country to receive the project was Honduras, where hundreds of transporters benefited from the cooperative model. During the inauguration in Tegucigalpa, Frank gave an emotional speech. 8 years ago, I was a desperate man, not knowing how to save my daughter. Today, I'm here in another country, helping families going through the same struggles I faced. This proves we should never lose hope. Catherine also spoke at the ceremony. This foundation is proof that love can move mountains. A father's love for his daughter, the love between people who meet and decide to build something together, love for humanity. Emily, now graduated and the foundation's executive director, closed the speeches. My parents taught me that true success isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we can give. Today, we're giving hope to families who need it most. The foundation's international expansion brought global recognition. Frank and Catherine were invited to speak at universities and conferences worldwide. Frank, do you realize the impact our story has had? Asked Catherine during a trip to Europe. Sometimes I still can't believe it. It feels like a dream. It's real, and it's only the beginning. In an interview with an international magazine, Frank was asked about the secret to the foundation's success. There's no secret, he replied. It's simple. Treat people with dignity, trust in human kindness, and never give up on doing what's right. Catherine, sitting beside him, added, and always remember that small gestures can have enormous consequences. A stop to help someone on the highway can change the world. The magazine published the article under the headline, "The Couple Who Proved Kindness Transforms Lives." On the 10th anniversary of the day they met, Frank, Catherine, and Emily returned to that highway where it all began. "It's here," said Catherine, pointing to the exact spot where her car had broken down. "Feels like yesterday," remarked Frank. "And at the same time, like a whole lifetime," added Catherine. They stopped at the same place and held a small symbolic ceremony, giving thanks for everything that had happened since that day. "You know what moves me the most?" said Emily. "What?" asked her parents, thinking about how many people have been helped because of that moment, thousands of families in so many countries. "And that's just what we know," said Frank. "Imagine how many others have been inspired by our story to help someone else." "It's the multiplier effect of kindness," said Catherine. "One good deed leads to another, and so on." That night when they got home, the three sat in the living room to talk about the future. "What's next for us?" asked Frank. "To keep growing," replied Emily. "We have requests from 10 more countries to implement our model. And here in the United States, we could expand to other professional fields," suggested Catherine. "Bus drivers, delivery people, construction workers," listed Frank. "The possibilities are endless," said Catherine. They kept talking late into the night, planning ways to expand the positive impact of their work. "Do you know what makes me proudest of our story?" Frank asked. "What?" Catherine and Emily asked. "That we never lost our essence. Even with all the success, we're still the same people we were at the beginning." "That's true," Catherine agreed. "Money and recognition didn't change our values." "Because our values weren't based on money or recognition," Emily added. "They were based on love and kindness." The following week, Frank received a call that moved him deeply. "Mr. Frank, this is Brian Foster." Frank was surprised. It was the man who had tried to recruit him into the corruption scheme years ago. "Brian, how did you get my number?" "Mr. Frank, I just got out of prison. I served my time and I wanted to speak with you." Frank tensed, unsure what to expect. "What do you want, Brian?" "To apologize. And to thank you." "Thank me?" "Yes. If you hadn't exposed our scheme, I'd still be in crime. Prison made me reflect on my life." Frank was struck by the sincerity in Brian's voice. "And what do you plan to do now?" "Start over, honestly. And if possible, I'd like to work at your cooperative." Frank discussed Brian's request with Catherine and Emily. "What do you think?" Frank asked. "I believe everyone deserves a second chance," Catherine said. "I agree," Emily added, "especially someone who's acknowledged their mistakes." "Then let's give him an opportunity," Frank decided. Brian started working at the cooperative as a driver. His transformation was remarkable. He became one of the most dedicated employees and helped identify other former inmates who wanted to rebuild their lives. "Frank, thank you so much for the opportunity," Brian said after a few months. "Thank you for changing, Brian. It proves our mission is working." "What mission?" proving lives can be transformed through kindness and opportunity. Brian's story inspired Frank and Catherine to create a specific program for reintegrating former inmates. The program was a success and caught the attention of international organizations. Frank, our foundation has been invited to present the reintegration program at the UN, Catherine said excitedly. At the UN? That's incredible. Yes, they want to use our model as an example for other countries. The UN presentation became a milestone in the Foundation's history. Frank, who just a few years earlier had been a struggling truck driver, now spoke to representatives from around the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank said in his speech, "I'm here today not because I'm special, but because I believe every person has the potential to transform lives. My story proves it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you're willing to go." Catherine also delivered a powerful speech. "The foundation we built isn't just about helping people, it's about proving a better world is possible when we choose to see the potential in every human being." Emily closed the presentation with an emotional appeal. "My generation will inherit the world you're building today. Please, build a world where kindness is valued as much as competence, where success is measured by the ability to lift others, not just oneself." The presentation received a standing ovation, and several delegations approached the family to learn how to implement similar programs in their countries. After the UN event, Frank, Catherine, and Emily went to dinner at a simple restaurant in Los Angeles. "Do you realize how far we've come?" Catherine asked. "It still feels surreal," Frank replied. "For me, the most incredible thing is seeing how our simple story touched so many people," said Emily. "It's because it's a true story," said Frank. "People can feel when something is genuine." "And because it shows that anyone can make a difference," added Catherine. During dinner, they were approached by a family from the United States who recognized them. "You're Frank and Catherine from the Foundation," the woman said excitedly. "Yes, we are," replied Frank, slightly embarrassed by the recognition. "I wanted to thank you. My husband is a truck driver, and the cooperative helped us when our son needed surgery." Catherine was moved. "How is your son doing?" "He's great. The surgery was a success, and my husband now works for the cooperative." "That's wonderful to hear," said Frank. "You saved our family," the man said, tears in his eyes. After the family walked away, the three of them sat in silence for a moment. "This is why we do what we do," said Catherine. "For moments like this," Frank agreed. "And because there are thousands of families like theirs," Emily added. On the plane back to the United States, the three discussed their next projects. "I had an idea during the presentation," said Emily. "What is it?" Frank and Catherine asked. "What if we wrote a book about methodology, not our story, but how to implement effective social programs?" "That would be very useful," said Catherine. "We could share everything we've learned," Frank agreed. "And the royalties would go to the foundation, of course," Emily said. The book, Social Transformation, A Practical Guide, was released a year later and became a global reference for social responsibility. Universities worldwide adopted it in their courses. "Frank, our book is being translated into its 20th language," Catherine said, showing an email. 20 languages? That's incredible. It means our ideas are reaching the farthest corners of the world. 5 years after the UN presentation, the Frank Miller and Catherine Parker Foundation was operating in 30 countries and had directly helped over 100,000 families. During a conference in New York City, Frank was asked about the secret to staying motivated after so many years. "The motivation comes from knowing that every family we help has a story like ours," he replied. "Every child who gets surgery, every driver who finds dignified work, every former inmate rebuilding their life. They're the reason we wake up every day, ready to work." Catherine, standing beside him, added, "And it comes from knowing we're creating a legacy. When we're no longer here, the work will continue. The lives we touch today will touch others tomorrow." Emily, now a globally recognized leader in social responsibility, concluded, "Our motivation is simple. We believe a better world is possible, and we work every day to prove it." In the audience were hundreds of business leaders, students, and social activists from around the world, all eager to learn from the family that had turned a simple act of kindness into a global movement. After the conference, a young student approached Frank. "Mr. Miller, your story inspired me to change careers. I'm leaving my job at a multinational to work in social responsibility." "Are you sure about that?" Frank asked. "Yes. After hearing you speak, I realized I want my life to have a greater purpose." "Then you're making the right choice," said Frank. "But remember, you don't have to give up everything to make a difference. You can make a difference wherever you are." "What do you mean?" "You can transform the multinational where you work, propose social projects, internal changes, better working conditions. Sometimes change comes from within." The young man grew thoughtful. "I'd never thought about that before." "That's what we need most today," said Catherine, who had approached. "People working for change everywhere, in businesses, governments, universities, communities." "Your seeds," added Emily, "go wherever you are and plant kindness. The world needs gardeners in every corner." That evening, Frank, Catherine, and Emily had dinner at home, reflecting on their conversation with the young student. "You know what brings me the most joy?" said Frank. "What?" asked Catherine and Emily. "Seeing that our story is inspiring people to act right where they are. They don't need to start foundations or NGOs. They can make a difference by being more compassionate doctors, more dedicated teachers, more ethical business owners." "It's the true multiplier effect," Catherine agreed. "Every person we touch will touch others. And that's how kindness spreads," said Emily. "Like ripples in a pond." In the 15 years since they'd met on the highway, Frank and Catherine had built an empire of good. But for them, the greatest treasure remained the family they'd created. "Frank," Catherine said during a walk in the park near their home, "do you have any regrets about this whole journey?" "None, and you?" "None either. Only gratitude." "Gratitude for what?" "For you stopping that day, for showing me that good people still exist, for building all of this together." Frank stopped and took Catherine's hands. "Catherine, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every day. And you gave me hope when I didn't believe in anything anymore." They kissed as they had for 15 years, with the same passion and tenderness as their first kiss. "Dad, Catherine," Emily called out, running toward them. "What is it, sweetheart?" asked Frank. "I just got a call. Our foundation has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize." Frank and Catherine stood in shock. "Is this real?" Catherine asked. "Yes. The nomination came from a coalition of international universities." "I can't believe it," said Frank, still processing the news. "Believe it," Emily said, hugging her parents. "You deserve this and so much more." The news of the nomination spread quickly through the global press. Journalists from various countries sought out the family for interviews. "How does it feel to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize?" one reporter asked. "Honored," Frank replied, "but mostly responsible. If we win, it'll be an even greater duty to keep doing good." "This award isn't for us," Catherine added. "It's for everyone who believes a better world is possible." "And for all the families we've helped over the years," said Emily. "They're the real winners." The Nobel Peace Prize ceremony took place in Stockholm, Sweden. Frank, Catherine, and Emily were nervous but hopeful. When the name of the Frank Miller and Catherine Parker Foundation was announced as the winner, the three embraced, overcome with emotion. "I can't believe we won," said Frank. "We didn't win," Catherine corrected. "Kindness won." "Proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things," Emily added. In his acceptance speech, Frank spoke on behalf of the family. "Your Majesties, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 15 years ago I was a desperate truck driver who stopped to help a woman with a broken-down car. Today, I stand here receiving the greatest prize for those who work for peace. This proves there are no small gestures, only people who don't believe in the transformative power of kindness." Catherine continued the speech. "This prize isn't ours. It belongs to every driver we've helped, every child we've saved, every family we've rebuilt. It belongs to everyone who believes the world can be better when we choose to care for one another." Emily closed with a message for the future. "My generation and the ones to come face the challenge of building a world where rewarding kindness is unnecessary because kindness will be natural, where helping each other will be as common as breathing." This award is a step in that direction. The speech received a standing ovation from the entire audience. After the ceremony, Hundreds of people approached the family to congratulate them and thank them for their work. An elderly war veteran said to Frank, "Sir, I've fought for decades for a more peaceful world. You achieved in 15 years what many of us have struggled a lifetime to accomplish." "How so?" asked Frank. "You've proven that peace doesn't come from political agreements or treaties. It comes from ordinary people deciding to do good, one family at a time." A young activist told Catherine, "Miss Catherine, your story taught me I don't need to wait to be rich or powerful to make a difference. I can start today, right where I am." A child, the daughter of one of the guests, said to Emily, "When I grow up, I want to be just like you." "Not like me," Emily replied. "Be like yourself, but always willing to help others." That night, at the hotel in Stockholm, the three of them reflected on the incredible experience they had lived. "Do you realize our story has become part of human history?" said Catherine. "It's surreal," Frank answered. 15 years ago, I just wanted to save my daughter. Today, we're here with the Nobel Peace Prize. And it all started with you deciding to stop and help," said Emily. "Imagine if you had just driven past that day." "I don't even like to think about it," said Catherine. "Neither do I," Frank agreed. "Because it wouldn't just be our story that would be different. It would be the story of the thousands of families we've helped. That's why I always say, small gestures, big consequences," Emily said. On the flight back to the United States, the three of them planned how to use the Nobel's visibility to expand the Foundation's work even further. "With the prize, we'll get much more attention," said Catherine. "And much more responsibility," Frank added. "And many more opportunities to do good," said Emily. When they arrived in the United States, they were greeted by hundreds of people at the airport. Drivers, families they'd helped, Foundation staff, everyone wanted to celebrate the victory. "Frank, Catherine, Emily," the crowd cheered. Frank was moved to see so many people touched by their work. "Thank you, all of you," he said, holding the microphone handed to him. "This award is yours too. You are living proof that our work matters." Catherine also addressed the crowd. "Let's keep working together. The Nobel is just the beginning. We have many more families to help, many more lives to change." Emily closed the speech. "From now on, the whole world will be watching us. Let's show that the United States knows how to do good like no one else." In the months following the Nobel, the Foundation received donations and partnership offers from around the world. The prize money was entirely dedicated to expanding social programs. "Frank, look at this," said Catherine, showing reports. "With the Nobel funds and the new donations, we can expand to 50 more countries. 50 countries. That's incredible. And we can create new programs, education, housing, income generation. Let's turn the Foundation into a true global force for social transformation," said Emily. The 20th anniversary of their encounter on the highway was celebrated with a grand party at the Foundation's headquarters. Thousands attended, beneficiaries, donors, staff, officials. During the celebration, Frank gave an emotional speech. 20 years ago, Catherine and I were just two people with problems. Today, we are a family of millions of people around the world, all united by the desire to do good. This shows there is no limit to what we can achieve when we work together. Catherine also spoke. "These 20 years have taught me that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we're able to give, and that true happiness comes from knowing we've made a difference in someone's life." Emily, now a 35-year-old woman and a global leader in social responsibility, concluded the speeches. "My parents taught me that success isn't about achieving your dreams, but about helping others achieve theirs. Today, our foundation is proof that this principle works. We'll keep growing, not to become bigger, but to help more people." During the celebration, many shared how their lives had been transformed by the foundation. Former inmates who became entrepreneurs, children who received surgeries and grew up to be doctors, families who escaped poverty and now helped others. "Frank," said a man who approached during the event, "I'm a journalist and would like to know, what's the secret to running such a large organization without corruption or misuse of funds?" "Simple," Frank replied. "We never forget why we started, and we always remember that the money we manage isn't ours. It belongs to those who need our help. And how do you ensure transparency? We publish all our expenses, Catherine answered. Anyone can see where every penny goes. Plus, Emily added, all our projects have clear goals and are constantly evaluated. If something isn't working, we change it immediately. The journalist was struck by the simplicity of their answers. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, Frank said, but it is simple. When you do the right thing for the right reason, the decisions become clear. After the event, Frank, Catherine, and Emily returned home. They sat on the same couch where so many important decisions had been made over the years. Do you think we achieved everything we wanted? Frank asked. We achieved more than we wanted, Catherine replied. We wanted to save Emily, and we ended up saving thousands of families. We wanted to survive, and we ended up changing the world, Emily added. And most importantly, Frank said, we built a family rooted in love and the will to do good. A family that grew to include millions, Catherine said. And will keep growing, Emily finished. Frank looked at the two most important women in his life and felt deep gratitude. Do you know what I love most about our story? What? Catherine and Emily asked. That it proves every person has the power to change the world. We don't need to be rich, powerful, or special. We just need to be willing to do what's right. And the courage to begin, Catherine added. And the persistence to keep going, Emily said. They talked late into the night, planning new projects and reminiscing about pivotal moments in their journey. What do you think will happen in the next 20 years? Emily asked. I think we'll see our model adopted by governments and businesses worldwide, Catherine said. I think we'll raise a generation of young people committed to social change, Frank said. And I think we'll prove a world without poverty is possible, Emily said. The following week, Frank received a call that moved him deeply. Mr. Frank, this is the City Hall of your hometown. Yes, I'm listening. We'd like to propose naming the street where you were born Frank Miller Street. Frank was speechless for a moment. That's a great honor, but I don't think I deserve. Mr. Frank, you've brought pride to our city. It's only right you're honored. Frank talked to Catherine and Emily about the proposal. Do you think I should accept? Of course, said Catherine. It's a well-deserved recognition. And it might inspire other children born on that street, added Emily. The plaque unveiling ceremony was emotional. Frank returned to the simple neighborhood where he had grown up, now accompanied by officials and journalists. Mr. Miller, said the mayor, you are proof that it doesn't matter where we are born but where we decide to go. Frank gave a simple speech. This honor isn't for me. It's for all the children who will grow up on this street, so they know they can dream big and make a difference in the world. In the audience were many neighborhood children. Frank spoke directly to them. Kids, remember this. You have the power to change the world. Start by being kind to your classmates, helping your parents, and studying hard. The rest will come naturally. A little girl raised her hand. Mr. Miller, how can I be like you? Frank smiled and knelt to her level. You don't need to be like me. You need to be the best version of yourself. But if you want advice, whenever you see someone in need, stop and help, even if it seems small. Like when you helped Catherine. Exactly. I didn't know that day I was changing my life. I just knew it was the right thing to do. The girl smiled and ran to hug Frank. That evening, at the City Hotel, Frank, Catherine, and Emily reflected on the day. You know what moved me the most today, said Frank. What? Seeing those children looking at us like we were heroes. But we're not heroes. We're just ordinary people who decided to do good. But to them, that makes us heroes, said Catherine. And maybe that's what the world needs, more everyday heroes doing extraordinary things. That's what our foundation stands for, said Emily. Proof that anyone can be a hero in someone's life. On the flight back to New York City, the three were approached by a family who recognized Frank. Mr. Miller, we're from Ireland, said the father. We came to the United States just to meet you. Just to meet me? Asked Frank, surprised. Yes. Our daughter had cancer and was treated with resources from your foundation. We wanted to thank you in person. The mother stepped forward with a girl around 10 years old. This is our daughter, Lily. She's cured thanks to you. Lily shyly approached Frank. Thank you for saving me. she said, handing him a drawing she had made. Frank looked at it, a depiction of him, Catherine, and Emily, surrounded by children from around the world. "Lily, this is beautiful, thank you so much." "Mr. Miller, can I ask you something?" said Lily. "Of course." "Why do you help people you don't even know?" Frank thought for a moment. "Lily, you know when you see someone crying and feel sad too?" "Yes. It's because we're all connected. When someone suffers, we all suffer a little. When someone is happy, we all feel a little happier too." "So you help us because you're happy when we're happy." "Exactly. You understand perfectly." Lily smiled and hugged Frank, Catherine, and Emily. For the rest of the flight, the Irish family shared how their lives had changed after Lily's treatment. "We started helping other families in Ireland too," said the father. "We formed a small group but have already helped over 50 families. "That's wonderful," said Catherine. "You've captured the true spirit of our foundation." "What is it?" asked the mother. "Helping isn't about having a lot of money," said Emily. "It's about having the heart to do good. And every person helped becomes someone who can help others," added Frank. When the plane landed in New York City, Frank, Catherine, and Emily said goodbye to the Irish family. "Keep up your work in Ireland," said Frank. "You're our extension there." "We will," promised the father, "and we'll teach our daughter to do the same." Lily waved from the airport window as the American family walked away. "You know what amazes me most about meetings like this?" Catherine said in the car on the way home. "What?" "Seeing how our story multiplies. That family in Ireland is doing the same work we are, without us even asking or organizing it." "That's the true ripple effect," Frank agreed. "People learn by doing, not just by listening. And that means our mission will continue even when we're no longer here," Emily added. When they got home, they found a stack of letters from people all over the world thanking them for their help or asking for guidance to start similar projects. "Look at this," Catherine said, holding up a letter. "Her group of students in South Korea wants to create a cooperative to help the elderly." "And this one," Frank said, picking up another, "is from a group of teachers in Canada who want to start an assistance program for underprivileged students' families." "There are hundreds of initiatives inspired by our work," Emily remarked, flipping through the letters. They spent the evening answering some of the letters, offering guidance and encouragement to those who wanted to make a difference in their communities. "You know what this makes me think?" Frank said. "What?" "That maybe our role now is less about doing things directly and more about teaching others how to do them." "How so?" Catherine asked. "Well, our foundation already has a solid structure and runs smoothly. Maybe it's time we focus more on empowering others to create their own initiatives." "That's an interesting idea," Emily said. "We could create a global mentorship program." "Exactly," Catherine replied. "Instead of trying to be everywhere, we can train local leaders who know their realities best." The idea for the mentorship program became the foundation's next big project. Frank, Catherine, and Emily began traveling the world, no longer to implement projects, but to train local leaders. In every country they visited, they met people inspired by their story and eager to make a difference in their communities. In Uganda, they met Tanya, a nurse who wanted to create a healthcare program for children in rural areas. "How did you manage to organize everything so well?" Tanya asked. "We started small," Frank answered, "one family at a time. When you prove it works on a small scale, it's easier to convince others to support it. And we always kept things transparent," Catherine added. "People trust you when they can see exactly how the money is used." "Most importantly," Emily said, "we never lost sight of our original mission, helping families in need." In Vietnam, they met Amir, an engineer who wanted to create cooperatives for rickshaw drivers. "You inspired me," Amir said. "When I heard Frank's story, I thought, if a truck driver in the United States could change so many lives, I could do something here too." "And you can," Frank said. "You know your reality better than we do. Our experience can guide you, but you'll find the specific solutions." "How do we start?" Amir asked. "The same way we did," Catherine replied. "Find one family that needs help and help them. Then tell others what you did. From there, the movement grows naturally." In the United Kingdom, they met David, a businessman who wanted to turn his company into a model of social responsibility. "You've done something unique," David said. You've proven it's possible to be both financially successful and socially impactful at the same time. Actually, said Emily, we discovered that one thing strengthens the other. When you treat your employees well and help the community, your company becomes stronger too. How do you convince other business owners of that? Asked David. By showing results, replied Frank. Implement changes in your company and document the outcomes. When other business owners see that it works, they'll want to do the same. After 2 years traveling the world and training leaders, Frank, Catherine, and Emily returned to the United States with a sense of mission accomplished. Do you realize what we've achieved? Said Catherine during a dinner at home. What? Asked Frank and Emily. We've turned our personal story into a global movement. Today, there are thousands of people around the world doing work similar to ours. And each one adapted to their local reality, added Frank. That's far more effective than trying to control everything centrally. It's like planting seeds, said Emily. Each one grows according to the soil it's planted in, but they all bear fruit. A year later, the foundation organized the first World Congress of Social Leaders. Over 1,000 people from 100 countries gathered in New York City to share experiences and learn from one another. Welcome to the first Congress that isn't about us, said Frank at the opening. It's about you, the communities you represent, and the solutions you're creating. Catherine continued the opening remarks. You are proof that our intuition was right. The world is full of good people willing to make a difference. They just needed inspiration and guidance to get started. Emily concluded the opening. Over the next 3 days, you'll share experiences, form partnerships, and leave here even better, prepared to transform your communities. This is the real goal, multiplying good. During the Congress, over 500 social projects inspired by the Frank Miller and Catherine Parker Foundation's methodology were presented. Tanya, from Uganda, shared her program, which had already helped more than 2,000 children receive medical treatment. Amir, from Vietnam, showed how his cooperative had improved the lives of 5,000 rickshaw drivers' families. David, from the United Kingdom, explained how his company had become a model for social sustainability, inspiring hundreds of other European businesses. Do you realize what's happening here? Frank said to Catherine and Emily during a break. We're seeing our methodology being refined by people who know their realities better than we do, replied Catherine. It's as if our story has taken on a life of its own, said Emily. On the last day of the Congress, participants signed the New York Declaration, a commitment to continue working for social transformation in their communities and to support one another. This declaration marks the official birth of a global movement, said Frank at the closing ceremony. A movement that has no owner, no center, and no end, added Catherine. A movement that will keep growing long after all of us are gone, said Emily. After the Congress, Frank, Catherine, and Emily felt complete. They had turned their personal story into a global legacy. You know what makes me proudest of all this? Said Frank. What? Asked Catherine and Emily. That we never lost our essence. We're still the same people who met on the highway 25 years ago. It's true, Catherine agreed. Success didn't change our values. Because our values were never based on money or fame, said Emily. They've always been based on love and the desire to help. A few months after the Congress, Frank turned 75. The birthday celebration was an international event, with representatives from all the countries where the Foundation's methodology was being applied. Frank, said Catherine during the anniversary speech, you turned a moment of despair in your life into the greatest movement for social transformation I've ever known. We transformed, Frank corrected. None of this would have been possible without you and Emily. And without all the people who believed in us over the years, Emily added. During the party, a young journalist asked Frank, Mr. Miller, if you could go back in time, would you change anything in your story? Frank thought for a moment before answering. Yes, I would. I would have stopped to help people on the highway long before I met Catherine. I would have started doing good much earlier in life. And what advice would you give to young people who want to make a difference? Start today. Don't wait to have more money, more time, or more knowledge. Start with what you have, where you are, in whatever way you can. Catherine, standing beside him, added, and remember, small gestures can have big consequences. Never underestimate the power of a kind act. Emily concluded. And most importantly, don't do good expecting recognition. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Recognition may or may not come, but the satisfaction of having helped someone always does. At the end of the party, Frank, Catherine, and Emily gathered privately to reflect on their journey. "Do you think we achieved everything that was possible?" Frank asked. "I think we achieved far more than we ever imagined," Catherine replied. "And the most important thing," Emily said, "is that we created something that will keep growing with or without us." "That's what comforts me the most," Frank said, "knowing our work will continue, that others will benefit, that good will multiply." "And knowing our family is complete," Catherine added, looking at Frank and Emily. "The family that started with a broken-down car on the highway," Emily said, smiling. "And grew to include millions of people around the world," Frank said. That night they returned home and sat on the couch where so many important decisions had been made. "Do you know what I love most about our story?" Catherine asked. "What?" Frank and Emily replied. "That it proves true love isn't just between couples or families, it's love for humanity. It's the ability to care for people we've never even met." "And that this love can move mountains," Frank added. "It can change the world," Emily said. They talked late into the night, as they had for 25 years, planning the future and giving thanks for the past. "What would you want written about us when our story is told to future generations?" Emily asked. Frank thought for a moment. "That we were ordinary people who did extraordinary things because we believed in the power of kindness." Catherine added, "That we proved it's possible to build wealth by helping others, that true success is measured by the good we do." Emily concluded, "And that our greatest legacy wasn't money or businesses, but the example that anyone can make a difference if they're willing to try." The next morning, Frank woke early and went to the balcony. He watched the city waking up and thought of all the truck drivers heading out to work, all the families being helped by the foundation, all the leaders around the world implementing social projects inspired by their story. Catherine joined him on the balcony. "What are you thinking about?" "How our simple story became part of so many people's lives. It's beautiful, isn't it?" "Yes, and a little frightening too, to think that if I hadn't stopped that day, but you did. And that's the only version of the story that matters." Emily stepped onto the porch carrying coffee for the three of them. "Good morning, family. How about we plan the future?" "What future?" asked Frank. "We're almost 76 years old. My future is enjoying time with you and seeing our work continue." "Dad, you have energy for 20 more years of work," said Emily, laughing. "And he really does," agreed Catherine. "There's still so much we can do." Frank smiled, feeling truly energized by the prospect of continuing to do good. "Then let's keep going, for as long as God allows." "Let's keep going together," said Catherine. "Forever," added Emily. They embraced, gazing at the city waking up, knowing that somewhere at that very moment someone was stopping to help a person in need, perpetuating the cycle of kindness they had begun 25 years earlier on a simple highway, with a simple gesture that had turned into the greatest adventure of their lives. The end of the story, and